The galaxy was vast, its depths unfathomable. For centuries, humanity had been an insignificant speck compared to the ancient races that ruled the stars. The Cairn Empire, a brutal and war-hardened species, had long believed that their superior technology and unrelenting conquest would crush any opposition. When they first encountered humanity, they saw us as weak, fragile, and ripe for conquest. But they underestimated something far more dangerous than technology. The Cairn launched their attack on Earth with devastating speed. Their warships, capable of decimating entire fleets in a single strike, descended upon the human homeworld like a swarm of locusts. The humans, defenseless and vulnerable, struggled to form any resistance. Governments crumbled, cities burned, and for a brief moment, it seemed that the end had come. But amid the chaos, one thing became undeniably clear to the Cairn: humans refused to break. Despite overwhelming odds, resistance groups sprang up across the planet. Small pockets of humanity, survivors of the initial wave, fought with a ferocity that the Cairn had never seen before. It wasn't advanced technology that allowed them to keep fighting, it was something far more primitive, something that transcended mere machines: a will to survive. Commander Tral of the Cairn watched with increasing frustration from his flagship, Grozen. The humans seemed to never give up. Every time a city was wiped from the face of the earth, a new resistance cell would rise from the ashes. His soldiers, trained in the arts of conquest, began to grow weary of these endless skirmishes. They had never encountered an enemy like this before, one that didn't surrender, one that didn't bend to the will of the conqueror. They should have fallen by now, Tral muttered to himself, his massive fingers gripping the armrest of his command chair. His war-hardened eyes narrowed as he observed another human counterattack, led by what appeared to be a band of civilians armed with nothing more than makeshift weapons and stolen Cairn technology. The more Tral tried to break their spirit, the more determined the humans became. It was as if they fed off their own suffering, turning defeat into a driving force for vengeance. Humanity had something the Cairn Empire couldn't comprehend: an unyielding belief in the future, a need to fight, no matter the cost. But Tral couldn't shake the nagging thought in the back of his mind. He'd seen the humans push back before, but this was something different. This was more than survival, it was a refusal to allow their enemies to dictate their fate. Humanity, in the most unlikely of ways, had begun to win the war, not through superior firepower, but through their indomitable will to survive. Back on Earth, the leaders of the human resistance gathered in what remained of a hidden underground facility. General Sarah Green, once a commander in the United States Army, now led what could be considered the last organized human army. She paced across the room, her eyes scanning the map of Earth, which had been decimated by months of Cairn bombardment. Yet, humanity had found a way to survive. They adapted, scavenging whatever technology the Cairn had left behind and using it against them. "We don't have much time," General Green said, her voice low but firm. "The Cairn will come for us again, but this time, we're going to hit them hard. We've learned their weaknesses, and we're not just fighting to survive anymore. We're fighting to win." Her eyes locked onto the faces of the people around her. There were no soldiers here, just men, women, and children who had picked up arms to defend their world. A scientist, a farmer, an engineer, and even a former teacher. They were the last line of defense. And every one of them shared the same unbreakable will to protect the future of humanity. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Cairn fleet, Tral began to realize that the humans' resilience wasn't just a fluke. It was a force that no amount of Cairn weaponry could shatter. It was something that went beyond survival. Something primal, something deep within the human spirit. The Cairn had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. And as Tral prepared for the next battle, he felt the first stirrings of doubt creep into his mind. Could the Cairn truly defeat this unyielding will? Would the human's indomitable spirit be the one thing that could bring down the might of the Cairn Empire? The war had only just begun. And humanity had something no one else could ever replicate: the will to survive at any cost. The Cairn Empire had underestimated humanity's capacity for persistence, but it was becoming increasingly clear that their initial assumptions were wrong. The war had evolved from a swift and overwhelming conquest to something far more dangerous, a protracted conflict where humanity, with its unique will to survive, was making a stand unlike any other species in the galaxy. In the aftermath of the initial strikes, the Cairn had expected Earth's governments to collapse completely, and for humanity to fall into disarray. Instead, what emerged were fractured, yet remarkably resourceful groups, cell-based resistance movements that refused to bow to the invaders. This guerrilla warfare, fueled by a collective resolve, took the Cairn by surprise. Commander Trall watched with a grim sense of realization as the human resistance began to organize in ways he had not anticipated. Small skirmishes turned into coordinated strikes. The once fragmented groups of survivors now shared knowledge and resources, running hit-and-run operations against Cairn outposts with remarkable precision. Human ingenuity seemed to be as limitless as their resolve. They had begun to modify the Cairn technology they had scavenged, adapting it to their needs, reprogramming their weapons, and even hacking into Cairn communication systems. It was almost as if the very spirit of resistance had evolved into something that matched the cunning and brilliance of their invaders. On the ground, the resistance was led by General Sarah Green, who had become more than just a military commander. To the people of Earth, she was a symbol of defiance, a rallying cry against the Cairn occupation. Her leadership was a beacon, and she quickly rose to prominence not just for her military prowess, but for her ability to unite a fractured humanity. One of her most trusted operatives, Lieutenant James Walker, stood by her side as they prepared for their most ambitious mission yet. A Cairn supply convoy had been spotted near a ruined city once known as Chicago. It was heavily guarded, and the Cairn were known to leave no survivors when they struck, but this time, the resistance had a plan. "We hit them hard and fast," Walker said, studying the intelligence gathered from their spies. "The Cairn won't know what hit them." Green nodded. She understood the risks, but the potential rewards outweighed the danger. A successful attack on this convoy could cripple Cairn's supply lines, significantly hindering their war effort and giving humanity a brief but crucial respite. But it would require precision, coordination, and above all, belief in the cause. The strike force was ready. It consisted of civilians turned fighters, engineers turned tech specialists, and former soldiers who had sworn to protect the last vestiges of humanity. They had no fear of death, because death was preferable to allowing their planet to fall into the hands of the Cairn. As the team made their way through the ruined streets, the Cairn convoy came into view. Heavy warships hovered overhead, and the ground trembled beneath the weight of their armored transport vehicles. Despite the overwhelming strength of the invaders, the resistance knew they had a critical advantage. Their numbers were small, but they were unpredictable, operating under the radar, using the terrain to their advantage. The battle began. Explosions rocked the convoy as hidden fighters emerged from the rubble, attacking with everything they had. The Cairn soldiers, initially caught off guard, began to regroup, but by then, it was too late. The humans' relentless assault had already taken its toll. Every Cairn vehicle that fell was a symbol of defiance, a testament to humanity's refusal to go down without a fight. Back on the Cairn flagship Grozen, Trall watched the chaos unfold on his tactical screen. His first instinct was to crush the humans immediately, but something held him back. It wasn't fear, it was something deeper. The humans were not acting like a beaten species. They were acting like they had nothing to lose, like they were prepared to sacrifice everything. The resistance fighters on Earth, who had started as nothing more than survivors, were now becoming warriors. They had learned to use the Cairn's own technology against them, forcing the invaders into a position where they had to adapt to a war they weren't prepared for. Trall's irritation grew into something much more dangerous: curiosity. Humanity's greatest asset wasn't its technology, nor its numbers, it was its unyielding spirit. The Cairn had conquered many civilizations, but they had never faced an enemy that valued survival above all else. And that unbreakable will was beginning to show the first signs of victory. Meanwhile, the resistance celebrated the successful raid as a victory, but Green remained focused. The battle had been hard fought, but it was just one small skirmish in a larger, unending war. They needed more victories like this to shift the balance of power in their favor. The Cairn might have advanced weapons and ships, but humanity had something they couldn't understand: the drive to survive, to fight for what was theirs, and to never give up, no matter the cost. And the Cairn were beginning to realize that humanity's secret weapon was not something they could simply destroy. It was a force that could never be conquered, an unbreakable will to survive. The human resistance was gaining momentum. After the victory at the Cairn convoy, the scattered groups of survivors across Earth began to unify under a common cause. General Sarah Greene's message resonated across the globe: humanity would never surrender. Their enemies could take their cities, destroy their homes, and shatter their armies, but they could never take away their will to fight. The Cairn, however, had grown frustrated. Despite their superior technology and overwhelming firepower, they couldn't seem to break the humans. Every time they thought they had the resistance cornered, it slipped from their grasp, reorganizing and launching attacks with new strategies. Worse yet, the humans were learning. Their scavenging efforts had led to a rapid improvement in the tools they used, and they were now attacking the Cairn's most vulnerable points, forcing Tral to reconsider his tactics. Commander Tral paced the cold, metallic floor of his flagship Grozen, his mind racing as he watched yet another failed assault unfold on Earth's surface. His officers stood by, their expressions a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "These humans are everywhere," Tral growled. "Every time we think we've struck at the heart of their resistance, they reappear stronger. What do they want from us?" "Perhaps it's not what they want, Commander," one of his officers ventured cautiously. "Perhaps it's what they can't afford to lose." Tral's eyes narrowed. He had heard the reports: humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their future. It was a level of commitment that transcended simple survival. It was a fight for everything they had ever known. Back on Earth, General Greene stood at the head of a war council. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with the tension of what was to come. The Cairn had escalated their attacks, targeting human cities with even more brutal force. Thousands had died, and the bodies of loved ones littered the streets. Yet, despite this, the resistance stood strong, driven by an unwavering belief that humanity's survival was worth the cost. "We can't keep fighting like this," Lieutenant Walker spoke bluntly, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "We've suffered too many losses. The Cairn have brought us to the brink. If we don't find a way to turn the tide soon, it'll be over." Greene's expression remained stoic, though her mind was weighed down by the reality of their situation. "I know," she replied softly. "But the cost of losing is far greater than the cost of continuing. We can't afford to give up now." The war had taken its toll. The constant battles had drained resources and morale. There were no safe zones left on Earth. Every inch of land was contested, every city a battleground. But the resistance had adapted. They had begun constructing secret underground bunkers, hidden in the ruins of once great cities, where they could regroup and strategize without the threat of immediate annihilation. Yet, despite their resilience, there was no denying the brutal reality of their situation. The Cairn were relentless. With each passing day, they seemed more determined to crush humanity's spirit. But humanity was no stranger to hardship. They had endured wars, famine, and disease for centuries. And each time, they had come back stronger. As Greene sat in the War Council, a new message came through. It was from a resistance cell deep in Cairn territory. The message was brief but powerful: "We've found it. The Cairn's weak point. We can destroy their fleet, if we can get to the heart of their operation." The room went silent. This could be the breakthrough they had been waiting for, the moment when humanity could finally land a blow that would shift the balance of power in their favor. But it came with a price. The operation was dangerous. The Cairn would not allow anyone to penetrate their defenses easily, and the human forces were spread thin. The risk of failure was high, but if they succeeded, it could change the course of the war. Greene's eyes hardened with determination. "We're taking that chance. Prepare the strike team." Across the world, the resistance prepared for its boldest mission yet. Volunteers from all corners of the planet came forward, driven by the same unbreakable will to survive. They were not soldiers, they were everyday people, farmers, scientists, teachers, parents, each willing to lay down their life for the future of their children. In the depths of the Cairn fleet, Commander Trowell prepared for what he thought would be another easy victory. But as he watched the movements of the human forces, something felt different. There was a sense of purpose in their actions now, an almost tangible desperation. "They're preparing for something," Trowell muttered, his eyes fixed on the reports coming in from his scouts. "Something big." The humans were about to strike at the heart of the Cairn Empire. And this time, their will to survive might just be enough to tip the scales in their favor. But the price of defiance was steep. The coming battle would see countless lives lost, and many would never return. It was a gamble, a risk humanity had to take. For survival was not just about avoiding death. It was about refusing to be defeated. And as the human resistance mobilized, one thing was certain: they would never stop fighting. No matter the cost. No matter the odds. Because humanity's greatest weapon was not technology, not firepower, and not numbers, it was their unbreakable will to survive. The day had come. The human resistance had gathered all of their strength, all their courage, and all their ingenuity for one final push, one assault that could shift the course of the war. The Cairn Empire, with its fleet of terrifying warships and vast resources, had underestimated the resilience of humanity. But now, as they prepared to strike at the very core of the Cairn's operations, they would find out just how wrong they were. The mission was clear: infiltrate the Cairn's central command hub, located on a massive orbital station called Vorthak. It was where Trowell and the Cairn High Command coordinated the invasion, a fortress of technology and heavily guarded by the Cairn's best warriors. The station housed the Cairn's most valuable secrets, their fleet's tactical strategies, their weapon blueprints, and most importantly, their central control system. If the resistance could breach Vorthak and disrupt the Cairn's command, it would cripple their ability to wage war. But it was a suicide mission. Vorthak was a heavily fortified stronghold, with shields that could withstand any human weaponry. The Cairn fleet had control over every sector of space surrounding Earth, and their patrols were relentless. Even the best of the resistance wouldn't survive long enough to breach the station, let alone escape. It was the ultimate gamble. General Sarah Green stood before her strike team, a group of hand-picked operatives who had volunteered for the mission. They were a mix of veterans and civilians, all of whom had lost family, friends, and homes to the Cairn. Now, they were ready to sacrifice everything for humanity's survival. Green addressed them with a somber tone, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of the mission. "You all know what's at stake. This is our chance to end this war. To take the fight to them. We'll breach Vorthak and destroy their control systems. But make no mistake, this is not about victory. It's about survival. Every one of us knows we might not come back. But we fight not just for us, but for everyone left behind. For Earth." Lieutenant James Walker, who had been by Green's side since the early days of the war, stepped forward. "We've been through hell together. We know what it means to fight when the odds are against us. This mission is no different. We have one chance, and we're not going to waste it." Green nodded. "Let's make it count." As the team boarded the assault ship, a specially modified Cairn vessel they had captured and reprogrammed, the Resistance's plan unfolded. The ship would slip past Cairn radar and enter the space surrounding Vorthak under the cover of a massive debris field. It was their only hope of avoiding detection before they could strike. The journey was perilous, but the strike team remained focused. They knew that once they reached Vorthak, there would be no turning back. They would have to fight their way through the Cairn defenses, infiltrate the heart of the station, and destroy their central control node, a task that seemed almost impossible. Back on Earth, the remaining resistance forces readied themselves for the inevitable retaliation. The Cairn would not take the loss of their central command lightly. Every human fighter knew the Cairn would unleash their full might on Earth in revenge. But no matter what happened, the resistance had made its stand. The strike team's ship entered the debris field and made its way toward the station's perimeter. As they approached, the vast silhouette of Vorthak loomed before them, an immense, ominous presence in the void of space. The station was a fortress, its massive hull studded with weapons and shields that could obliterate entire fleets. The resistance had no choice but to take a chance and infiltrate from an unguarded side, using a series of covert maneuvers to avoid the cairn's constant surveillance. However, just as they reached the station's outermost defenses, the cairn sensors detected the anomaly. A swarm of cairn warships began to close in, but the strike team had already made their move. Their ship dropped out of stealth, launching a barrage of makeshift weapons at the cairn defenses in a last-ditch attempt to create a diversion. "Get to the docking bay!" Green shouted as the team scrambled to their exit pods. The ship shuddered under the incoming fire, but the mission had already begun. The team's escape pods were launched straight into Vorthak, and as they hit the station's outer hull, the real battle began. The station was a labyrinth of dark metal corridors and towering structures, filled with cairn guards and automated defenses. The team had one advantage: unlike the cairn, they weren't bogged down by the weight of empire and command. They moved quickly, silently, attacking without mercy, using everything they had learned from their years of resistance. Tral, meanwhile, watched from his command center on Grozen, where the first reports of the attack reached him. His eyes narrowed. "They found us," he said coldly. His officers scrambled to organize a counteroffensive, but the humans had anticipated this. Their infiltration was only the first part of the plan, disrupting the cairn fleet was the second. As the strike team pushed deeper into the station, they encountered fierce resistance. They fought tooth and nail, pushing through the cairn's defenses, but they could feel the walls closing in. Their progress was slow, but they were getting closer to their goal. "Almost there," Walker said, panting from the exertion. "Just a little further." They reached the heart of the cairn command center. There, they planted explosives and triggered the shutdown sequence, sending waves of disruption through the entire station. But just as they were about to leave, an explosion rocked the room, and the team was forced to fight their way out. The cairn had expected them. With the central command node in ruins and the cairn fleet thrown into disarray, the humans had done the impossible. But at what cost? The price of defiance had been steep. Many in the strike team were lost in the battle. The war was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had delivered a decisive blow to the cairn. The question now was, could they survive the retaliation? The human resistance had achieved the unthinkable. Vorthak, the heart of the Cairn Empire's war machine, had been breached, and the strike team's sabotage had crippled their command structure. But victory came at a steep price. The explosion that shattered the Cairn's central control node had not only triggered chaos within their fleet, but it had also triggered a massive, retaliatory assault on Earth. The Cairn were enraged, and they would stop at nothing to exact revenge on the species that had dared to defy them. General Sarah Green, now one of the few surviving leaders of the resistance, stood at the helm of a secret command post buried deep beneath the Earth's surface. The messages had come in, one after the other. Cairn warships were descending on the planet. The final invasion had begun. Her body ached from the past few days' battles, but there was no time for rest. The resistance had succeeded in one crucial mission, but they knew it would be their last. The Cairn were sending their full fleet to Earth, and if humanity was going to survive, they would have to fight one final, desperate battle. "We've bought ourselves a little time," Green said, looking at the tactical map displayed before her. "But we can't run from this. Earth will be the site of our final stand." Lieutenant James Walker, who had been by her side throughout the war, stood beside her, eyes filled with the grim reality of what was to come. "How much time do we have before they arrive?" Green turned her gaze to the clock. 12 hours, give or take. "Our best bet is to hit them where they're weakest, but we don't have enough forces left to make it a true counterattack. We'll need to hold our ground until we can get every last person off Earth, or fight until the end." Walker nodded. "We've been fighting for this long. We fight for the last of humanity, for our children, for Earth itself. This is the moment. We give everything." The Cairn fleet was vast, stretching across the stars like a looming shadow. It was clear they were coming to wipe humanity from the face of the galaxy once and for all. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and on the verge of total annihilation. But they had something the Cairn couldn't understand, couldn't calculate, an unyielding will to survive. And if there was any chance they could repel the invaders, they would take it, no matter the cost. The skies above Earth were a sea of chaos as Cairn warships descended upon the planet. Each vessel was a massive fortress in its own right, with weaponry capable of leveling cities. The resistance forces had set up defenses in every remaining stronghold they could, using every scrap of Cairn technology they had scavenged over the course of the war. Yet, it was clear that this would be a battle unlike any other. As the first wave of Cairn ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they unleashed hell on Earth's remaining cities, obliterating them without hesitation. Humanity's survivors huddled in underground bunkers, while the last of the resistance mounted a futile defense against the overwhelming invasion. Green and Walker led a desperate counterattack, coordinating with any remaining military factions and civilian cells they could muster. The battle lines were drawn, and humanity's defenders held their ground, launching a series of guerrilla strikes against the Cairn's forward positions. "We hold the line here," Green ordered, rallying what few forces remained to defend a critical stronghold. The Resistance's mission was no longer just to fight back, it was to buy enough time for humanity's evacuation ships to launch. The Cairn were relentless, but Green knew this would be their last chance to escape Earth and live to fight another day. Meanwhile, in orbit, Tral watched from the bridge of the flagship Grozen. His hands gripped the armrests of his command chair as he surveyed the human resistance's desperate counteroffensive. He had underestimated them, underestimated their will to fight and their ability to rally together in the face of utter annihilation. But that would be their undoing. Now, with his fleet in position, it was only a matter of time before he wiped them out entirely. "Commander," one of his officers said, "the humans have launched a series of retaliatory strikes. We've lost contact with several of our ground forces." Tral's eyes burned with fury. Let them have their moment of defiance. It will be their last. But there was something else in Tral's heart, a strange flicker of uncertainty. It wasn't fear, not exactly. But he had never encountered a species like this. The humans were stubborn, resourceful, and above all, relentless. They fought not for power or conquest, but for survival. Tral had seen countless species fall before him, but the humans were different. "They'll never stop," Tral muttered to himself, his mind racing with the thought that perhaps the true cost of the Cairn's victory would not be measured in the destruction of humanity, but in the destruction of everything the Cairn had built. This was no longer just a war, it was an extinction event, not for Earth, but for his entire empire. Back on the ground, General Green's forces had pushed forward in one final, all-out attack against the Cairn's flagship fleet, knowing full well they were outnumbered. But as the final confrontation raged, an unexpected turn occurred. A series of Cairn warships, previously under Tral's command, began to malfunction. The central control systems the humans had destroyed in Vorthak were finally beginning to unravel the Cairn's command network. For a brief moment, humanity's resistance had the upper hand. With the Cairn fleet momentarily thrown into disarray, the human forces pressed the advantage. "It's now or never," Green shouted. She and her team mounted one last assault on the Cairn flagship Grozen, determined to strike at Tral himself and end the war once and for all. But the battle came at an unimaginable cost. The humans fought with everything they had, but the Cairn were vast and powerful. As the last of the resistance made their final assault, Green watched from a command center as Earth was swallowed by destruction, and the final evacuation ships launched in a desperate bid for survival. As the Cairn forces crushed the last remnants of humanity's resistance, General Green's voice carried over the comms. "We may fall here, but Earth's will to survive will never be broken. We fight for our children, and for the future." The Cairn might have won the battle, but humanity's spirit, its will to survive, had been unleashed across the galaxy. And though Earth was lost, the Cairn had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's true strength. The war was over, but the story of humanity was far from finished. The skies over Earth were silent now, a chilling emptiness where once the roar of battle had echoed. The Cairn had won the final confrontation, their massive warships now orbiting the decimated planet. Earth was a graveyard, its cities reduced to ash, its people scattered across the stars in the few remaining evacuation ships that managed to escape. But amid the devastation, humanity's story was far from over. Though they had lost their home, they had not lost the one thing the Cairn could never take from them, their unbreakable will to survive. Across the galaxy, the remnants of humanity's survivors, now scattered and broken, had begun to rebuild. The evacuation ships, designed for emergency escape, had found refuge on distant planets, some hostile, others uninhabited, but all brimming with potential. There were no grand cities, no sprawling metropolises, just small, hidden colonies of humanity, barely surviving on barren worlds. But they were alive. And they would fight again. In one such colony, nestled on the distant, rocky world of AEOs, a group of survivors gathered in a makeshift command center. These were not soldiers or generals, but scientists, engineers, farmers, and ordinary people. But the fire of humanity's spirit burned brightly in their hearts. And they had a plan. Leading this new resistance was someone who had once been part of the core team during the final battle on Earth, Lieutenant James Walker. His face was haggard from the hardships of their journey, but his eyes still held that same, unyielding spark that had defined humanity's fight. He was no longer the young officer who had once led a small group of soldiers. Now, he was a leader of a new generation, a symbol of hope for those who had survived. "We can't forget Earth," Walker said, his voice steady but filled with quiet anger. "It may be gone, but our fight isn't over. The Cairn think they've wiped us out. They believe that just because they destroyed our home, they've broken us. But they're wrong. We'll show them what happens when you push humanity to the edge. We're not going to sit here and fade into nothing." Around the room, heads nodded in agreement. These survivors, these ordinary men and women, had already begun to adapt to their new lives in the harsh environments of their new planets. But they were more than survivors. They were fighters, just like their ancestors who had battled through wars, plagues, and impossible odds throughout history. Their struggle for survival was written in their blood, and they would never abandon it. A young engineer, Ana Vasquez, stood up, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "I've been working on something," she said, holding up a datapad. "It's a prototype. If we can get the right materials, we can rebuild the weapon systems we used in the last fight. We can strike back, even if the Cairn think we've been defeated." Walker smiled faintly. "How soon?" "I've got a team working on it," Anna replied. "We can have a small fleet ready in a matter of months. But it's not just about weapons. It's about rebuilding. We need to establish new colonies, new alliances. We have the technology, the knowledge. And we have each other. Together, we can do this." The colony on AEOs, with its ragtag group of survivors, was only one of many hidden enclaves across the galaxy. A network of resistance cells, each harboring a piece of humanity's future, was slowly but surely growing. The Cairn might have destroyed Earth, but they had not wiped out humanity's spirit. It was impossible to extinguish the unrelenting drive for survival that ran through every human heart. Back on the Cairn homeworld, however, Commander Trowell was beginning to feel the first stirrings of doubt. He had won the battle, he had destroyed humanity's home, crushed their cities, and erased any trace of their civilization. But the more he observed the remnants of the human survivors scattered across the galaxy, the more he wondered if the victory was truly his. The humans had shown resilience before, and despite the massive loss, the spark of rebellion was not extinguished. He paced in his command chamber aboard the Grozen, the grand flagship that had led the assault on Earth. The reports from his fleet had been consistent. Human activity was still being detected, though in much smaller numbers. The survivors were organizing, rebuilding. It wasn't just the technology they were salvaging, it was their resolve. Trowell couldn't help but feel that something more dangerous than humanity's weapons was out there, something intangible, the very thing that had driven them to survive in the first place. "I don't understand it," Trowell muttered to his officers. "The humans, they should be gone. There should be nothing left. "They are scattered, Commander," one officer said. "But we still detect activity. It is faint, but it is there." Tral's mind churned as he realized the scope of his mistake. The cairn had underestimated humanity. Even in their most desperate hour, they had refused to surrender. And now, as the survivors began to regroup and rebuild, the cairn were not only dealing with the remnants of a broken species, they were facing the return of an unstoppable force. On AEOs, Walker continued to rally his people, even as they faced enormous challenges in rebuilding. Supplies were low, and their ability to defend themselves was limited. But one thing had become clear to them: their fight was not just for survival, it was for the future of humanity. Every day, more colonies were reaching out to each other, finding new ways to connect, to share resources, and to plan their return. Walker stood before a council of survivors, his voice firm as he spoke to the group. "We've lost Earth. But that's not the end of our story. It's just the beginning. The cairn will come for us again, but this time, they won't be facing scattered pockets of resistance. They'll be facing the full force of humanity's will." As he spoke, his words rang out like a battle cry across the colonies. It was no longer just about vengeance for Earth, it was about reclaiming what had been lost and ensuring that humanity would never again be at the mercy of invaders. They would fight. They would rebuild. And this time, they would win. In the void of space, the survivors set their course. The cairn had made the mistake of thinking humanity could be wiped out by a single blow. What they didn't understand was that humanity's true power wasn't in their weapons or technology, it was in their resilience, their will to survive, and their relentless determination to rise again, no matter how many times they were knocked down. The cairn had not won. The war had only just begun. Months had passed since humanity's last, desperate stand. Earth was lost, and the survivors had scattered across distant planets. But the fire of resistance had only grown stronger. The cairn might have thought they had crushed humanity, but they had failed to recognize the truth: the spirit of humankind could not be extinguished so easily. James Walker, now an emblem of hope and leadership, stood before the new fleet, humanity's last hope of reclaiming their future. He had led the survivors to this moment, gathering the scattered remnants of Earth's people into a force that could not only survive but also fight back. It had been a long journey from the ruins of Earth to the makeshift colonies on distant worlds, but humanity had rebuilt itself, piece by piece, like a broken sword reforged in the flames of adversity. Today, that sword would strike. Walker looked out at the fleet gathered in orbit around AEOs, now equipped with salvaged cairn technology and the ingenuity of Earth's greatest minds. These ships were small, but they were fast, powerful, and, most importantly, united by a single purpose: to take the fight to the cairn and reclaim the future of humanity. "Today," Walker said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of their shared mission, "we strike back. Not just for Earth, not just for revenge, but for every life we lost, and every soul still out there. We fight because this galaxy belongs to humanity, and no one, not the cairn, not any invader, will take it from us." The fleet's captains and commanders, survivors of Earth's war, nodded in solidarity. They had all lost something: families, friends, homes, but their resolve had only hardened. Now, they were ready to face their ultimate challenge: the Cairn Empire itself. In a faraway sector of the galaxy, Tral, now reeling from the unexpected resilience of humanity, had gathered his forces for the final phase of his conquest. He believed he had broken the will of humankind, but the reports from his intelligence network were troubling. Small skirmishes were being reported in systems that had previously been considered safe. The humans were regrouping, organizing in ways the cairn had never anticipated. And though the cairn had crushed Earth, they had failed to wipe out the spark of humanity's fight. Tral knew the humans had made a grave mistake by escaping to the far reaches of the galaxy. He had believed that the vast distances between them and his empire would prevent any significant rebellion. He was wrong. The humans were coming for him, and their will to survive was now a force that could no longer be ignored. Walker and his fleet moved into the heart of cairn-controlled space, their ships darting between planets and asteroid fields, staying out of sight until the final moment. They had gathered a coalition of human colonies, each contributing its resources and ships to this final offensive. The Cairn Empire had no idea what was coming. The first assault was swift, like a bolt of lightning crashing through the Cairn's defenses. Human ships, built with both Cairn technology and human ingenuity, launched precision strikes at weak points in the Cairn's outer defenses, disabling key installations and cutting off communication. For the first time in years, the Cairn were reacting, scrambling to secure their lines. Walker stood on the bridge of the flagship Phoenix, his eyes scanning the unfolding battle. He could feel the pulse of humanity's unity, the shared determination that had carried them to this point. Commander Walker, his communications officer, said, "The Cairn are massing reinforcements. We'll need to hit them harder if we're going to break through to the core." "We're not here to play defense," Walker replied. "We go in full force. Take down their flagship. If we take out Grozan, we disrupt their command. We hit them where it hurts." The plan was risky, there were still too many Cairn ships and too few human vessels, but the time for caution had passed. They couldn't wait for another opportunity. It was now or never. Meanwhile, on the Cairn flagship Grozan, Trow received the first reports of the attack. His commanders scrambled to adjust the fleet's tactics, but something was different about this human assault. It was unrelenting, determined. The humans weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for their future. Trow clenched his fists, his sharp eyes narrowing as he watched the battle unfold. "They should have been broken by now," he muttered to himself. "What is it about these humans that makes them impossible to kill?" His officers, equally stunned by the unexpected ferocity of the humans, hesitated. "The humans are showing greater resilience than anticipated, Commander. They've breached our outer defenses and are closing in on the flagship." Trow growled in frustration. "We cannot allow this. Prepare the fleet for a full counterattack. We crush them now." As the battle raged on, Walker's fleet continued to press forward, their coordinated attacks relentless and precise. They had one objective: the Grozan, the Cairn flagship, the symbol of their oppressive rule. If they could take it down, they could cripple the Cairn's ability to command their forces. The human forces charged through Cairn lines, engaging in ship-to-ship combat as the Phoenix and its fleet drew closer to the flagship. The Cairn were desperate now, throwing everything they had at the human forces, but the humans were unified, every fighter, every ship, every soldier determined to see this mission through. Walker's heart pounded in his chest as he saw the Grozan come into view, its immense size dominating the battlefield. The final fight was here. "This is it," Walker said. "All ships, full assault. We end this." The battle was a chaotic storm of laser fire, explosions, and tactical maneuvers. The human fleet slammed into the Cairn flagship, hitting weak spots, taking out weapon systems, and breaching the hull. Walker's command crew worked tirelessly, directing their forces with precision, cutting through the Cairn defenses like a blade through paper. And then, amidst the chaos, Walker led a boarding team onto the Grozan, crashing through its airlocks and making their way deep into the heart of the flagship. They fought their way through corridors, facing Cairn warriors in close-quarters combat. Every inch of ground they gained was bought with sweat and blood. At last, they reached the central command room, where Trow stood, waiting. His eyes narrowed as he saw Walker and his team approach. "So, the humans think they can win?" Trow sneered, his voice cold. "We don't think we can," Walker replied, his voice steady. "We know we can. Because we will never stop fighting." The final confrontation was a battle of wills. Trow fought with all the might of the Cairn Empire behind him, but Walker and his team fought with something more powerful, the unbreakable will to survive. With one decisive blow, Walker's team destroyed the Cairn's central command node, shutting down the flagship systems and sending the remaining Cairn fleet into disarray. Trow, realizing the depth of his defeat, ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The Cairn Empire's grip on the galaxy had been shattered. The humans had reclaimed the future. As Walker stood victorious on the Grozan, looking out into the stars, He knew the battle was far from over. But the cairn had learned a harsh lesson: humanity's will to survive could never be broken, no matter the odds. "We fight because we survive," Walker said quietly, knowing that this was only the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. The galaxy had been reshaped, and humanity, once thought to be a dying species, had risen from the ashes to claim its place among the stars. The cairn would never forget that.